Hello, everybody. This is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. Yesterday, I told the story about Minnesota Fats and how he inspired me at a young age. I've talked about Omaha John, Dalton Leone, Strong Arm John, lots of different people that had an influence on my career and especially my early years. One of the other characters in this chapter of my life was a guy named Rick Thompson. Rick was from St. Joe, Missouri, which wasn't too far from where I grew up. I grew up in Green City, Missouri. So it was about 120 miles, 130 miles east of Kansas City's where I was from, and St. Joe is pretty close to there. So it's kind of on the way to Omaha too, so I used to pick up Rick once in a while when I went to Omaha to gamble. That was where I cut my teeth when I was about 16 years old. When I was old enough to drive, I would go up to Omaha, and of course that's where I met John and played at a place called Big John's, even though it wasn't John Shupit's place. It was another John. So all these Johns, there was I was thinking about that earlier. There's a railroad John and a concrete John and a jungle John and Mexican Johnny. So lots of Johnny John nicknames in the pool world. But Rick Thompson was a kind of an unusual guy. He looked, he's real thin, but he wore a Gilligan's hat was his favorite hat to wear. And the first time I saw him playing pool, he wasn't wearing shoes. He liked to take his shoes and socks off and play on the, hardwood floor of the pool room. And I've seen him play for several hours and look at the bottoms of his feet, and they're like almost black from walking on those dirty floors. But he was like I said, he was an eccentric bird, really funny, dry sense of humor, and I picked up a lot of comical things from him, and he also was one of my good bad influences, if that makes any sense. He liked to drink and smoke a little herb, and he probably did about everything. But he was pretty strict with me, telling me, how, horrible, especially the harder drugs were for a person. And I guess, ironically, that's what ended up getting him. I heard he got on some stuff pretty bad there at the end, and that's unfortunate because he definitely should have practiced what he was preaching. But I listened, and I was fortunate in that regard. Omaha John, Strong Arm John, Dalton never would approve of me, doing anything other than maybe smoking a little herb. And I always like to take natural supplements, and ginseng and gotu kola, and I've taken stuff for my eyes and my joints and my skin for many, many years. But Rick Thompson called me up when I was 16 and was excited. He said, Steve Mizerak is going to be in Quincy, Illinois that week. It's just like 3 days from then. And he said, man, let's go over there and see Steve. Steve will give me the 7-ball. We can bust his ass. Which never would have happened. That was the last thing on Steve's mind, was to gamble giving somebody like him the 7-ball. But I told him I couldn't go anyway because I had a basketball practice, and then the next day I had a game. So, he charmed me a little bit, which didn't take much, and convinced me that I was never going to be an NBA basketball player, but that I did have a shot at becoming a professional pool player. And that made sense to me. So I ended up going with him over to Quincy, Illinois, which was, I think it was 68 miles from Kirksville. So it was probably about probably about 90 miles from where I grew up in Green City. So I got picked up Rick, I think, in Kirksville. For some reason, I remember he left a car there, and we rode over together. I think he came down from Columbia. So we went over to where Steve was doing the exhibition, and it was a real classy, setup. It was in a like a hotel ballroom. And Steve was an icon to me. He did the Lite Beer from Miller commercials and, was on TV all the time. Just a real class act, Everybody has their admirers and their haters, but Steve always treated me with respect, and I really, he was another one of those heroes to me when I was a kid. So so we stayed there, and Rick never asked him to gamble. It never did come up where it was appropriate. But we had a good time and watched Steve, play a few people. I don't think, I never did play him for some reason. Rick probably told me it would knock my game if I beat him. Jokingly, of course. But, so we ended that trip, and I ended up missing a basketball practice and a game. So when I went back on Monday, I knew the coach wasn't going to be too happy with me. So I ended up going to, he was the basketball coach and the PE coach and teacher or whatever. So I ended up going and seeing him, and he had me go into his office and sat down and had a gruff voice. He's like, CJ, what happened? Where were you? And I told him, I said, listen, I went over to see Steve Mizerak. He's a professional pool player, and I always wanted to see him, so I went over there to Quincy, Illinois, and watched him do an exhibition, and it inspired me to maybe someday be a professional pool player. So he looks at me like I'm crazy and said, you'll never be a professional pool player. You need to go to college, and you need to do this and do that. And I just went through one ear and out the other. I didn't really care about getting any life advice from this PE teacher, But I swear that it inspired me because, he told me, obviously, he's going to have to kick me off the team. And I told him right there, I said, Coach, I will never be an NBA basketball player, but someday I'm going to be a professional pool player, and I'm going to beat that Steve Mizerak. And I went out the door, and I don't approve of haters and necessarily want to ever hang around them, but they do add to, the fuel that it takes. Everything takes negative and positive to create energy. So, I'm thankful to my haters. They've done their best to knock me and just never really could. I always thought it was funny. I've got knocked before with women. And one time I was in Vegas, and there was a real attractive woman there, and I got to talking with her, and she was actually there with her boyfriend, but she took a liking to me, and some people saw us hanging out. 3 guys from Texas approached her and told her that I was no good. I owned strip clubs, and that I even had a stripper pole in my kitchen that I made girls, perform while they were cooking me breakfast, I guess. And so they tell her this, trying to drive her away. Well, it did the equal opposite of that, because the next day she met with me, and she was like almost excited. She's like, man, these guys came up to me and they said that you were in the strip club business. And I said, no, I'm not in the strip club business. The nightclub business. I have a pool room and a major nightclub. That was my background. Never strip clubs. And she said, well, they said you had a stripper pole in your house. Is that true? And I looked at her and I said, well, to be perfectly honest, I do have a stripper pole in my house. But to my credit, it's still in the box, and I've never taken it out. It was given to me by an ex-girlfriend as kind of a joke, and it all fits together, but it's in my spare bedroom in a box and has never been taken out. And she laughed and said, they told me that you had a stripper pole in your kitchen and that you made them, your girlfriends, like, perform while they're cooking you bacon and eggs, So we had a good laugh about that. So, things don't work out very well for those, we call them gamma males. I remember Joe Rogan told me to beware of the secret kings, the ones that think that they should be the king and that you just got lucky to get where you're at or whatever. So Joe's pretty funny. We've done we did a TV show together in LA and at the Hollywood Casino. That's on YouTube. I ought to upload that video for people to see. Had Tony Antigone and Joe Rogan. It was where Oliver Ortman played Alan Hopkins in the finals, but that was my second PCA tournament. So anyway, back to Rick Thompson and my elimination from my basketball career. So I left that office of the basketball coach, and I swear my blood was boiling, just to, needed to channel it, I guess, because about 8 or 9 years later, in Reno, Nevada, I played Steve Mizerak in my second professional pool tournament, and that match went down to Hill, racing to 11. It came down to 10, and I ran that last rack in less than a minute, or about a minute, I think that's what they told me. And it ended up being the best-selling video of the year for AccuStats. I remember Pat Fleming told me that, so I'm pretty sure he would know since he owns AccuStats. And so what a thrill, to play Steve Mizerak. I still remember that match, and I played really well. And he came back. I think I shot a 937 or something on AccuStats, and he was like 927, something like that. That's not the exact numbers, but we both shot a world-class level match. And, Steve was as gracious after that match, shaking my hand, as he was when I met him in Quincy, Illinois, and shook my hand. And he gave me an autograph back then. And I don't think I ever got a chance to tell him the story, but Steve was a great inspiration, and some of his family members are on Facebook. So if you see this and you knew Steve Mizerak and have a story, I'd like to hear it, or some type of interaction with the Miz. Share that, if you will. And if you want to learn more about my fundamentals, techniques, and systems I use to become the ESPN World Champion and Player of the Year in 1996 with Pool and Billiard Magazine, join me at masteringpocketbilliards.com. Until next time, this is CJ, over and out.